evening, everybody. Today is February 13th, 2019. The time is 6:52 p.m. This special meeting of the Edcachal South Independent School District is called to order. Mr. Peacock, can I have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Board President Robert Smallstreet.
Here.
Board Vice President Chris Morales.
Here.
Board Secretary Robert Peacock. Here. Board Trustee Fernando Torres.
Here.
Board Trustee Juan J. Ibarra. Board Trustee Tony Marco.
Here.
Board Trustee Rolando Lozano.
Here.
Board President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that the meetings has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Commissioner Fuentes, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can stay standing for the invocation. Ms. Rocha.
Yes. Heavenly Father, tonight we just thank you for this opportunity to bring us all together. Heavenly Father, and our Board of Trustees and Mr. Cavazos lead us in the decisions, the critical decisions for our district. We ask that you guide them, and that you bless them, and that you bless everybody here together tonight. And we ask all of this in Jesus' name, and we say amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ms. Rocha. Now moving on to item 3, consent agenda items. We have item A, approval of budget amendments, and item B, approval of out-of-district travel. If there's any questions on these, if not, we can entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Trustee Torres, second by Mr. Lozano. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 4, discussion and action items. Discussion and action on the interlocal cooperation agreement between the County of Hidalgo and the Edcachal South Independent School District. We have here, it says Mr. Cavazos, but I know we have Commissioner Fuentes present as well.
Yes, we do, Mr. President. Commissioner Fuentes has asked for some time before the board to talk to us about an interlocal agreement. As you're aware, we had a meeting a few weeks ago in which he asked for some time and came by and visited with us and talked to us about the importance of working together as a school district along with the cities in this area with his agency, so that we can make sure that our communications are clear in the event of any kind of weather disaster or whatever. So he wanted to talk to you also. I invited him to come in tonight.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cavazos, Board President, members of the board. I'd like to thank you for having me here today for your consideration on this interlocal that we're requesting between Hidalgo County Precinct 1 and also Edcachal ISD. We are right now engaging with all of the school districts in our precinct to make sure that we try to have this open line of communication. As Mr. Cavazos said, this really is more of a health, safety, and welfare resolution. What we're trying to do is, during evolving emergency situations, disaster planning, mitigation, response, and recovery, much like the weather event that occurred in June of 2018, we found that by using the school communication systems in Weslaco and Mercedes in the most highly affected areas, we were able to get the message of what we had available as far as resources to our constituents a lot faster. The county itself does not have a communication infrastructure anywhere near what school districts do. During your enrollment process, a lot of the schools obtain emails, phone numbers, and they're able to do robocalling, text messaging, emails, as they do with normal day-to-day school operations, whether a student is absent, whether there's some sort of an activity that's being planned at a certain school. Those types of communication outreach efforts that you guys have are the types of systems that we would like to use when it warrants during one of these emergency situations. Some examples that I communicated with Mr. President Schmalzried and with Mr. Cavazos: emergency situations like hurricanes. Obviously, when that type of an event is going to occur, we want to be able to hand out information to your students that they can take home to their parents, to their families, whether it's a hurricane preparedness map that's being handed out when kids come back from summer vacation, or whether it's we're going to be handing out sandbags at a local location, at some sort of distribution center here locally, from certain times on certain dates, whether we have cleaning supplies that are available after the storm event, whether it's food, first aid, the American Red Cross, the RGV Food Bank, any of that information, that we would disseminate that to you through your superintendent, and then at his discretion would pass that information along to the students. So all we're doing is trying to formalize that agreement that here's an opportunity for us to show the community that we're working together. We have access to a lot of weather information because of our emergency management system, not just at the county, but at the state level as well, the federal level. We are still actively trying to get FEMA to give us the public assistance that we know that we need and deserve in this area because of that June event. Weslaco ISD, their entire bus fleet destroyed. Our roads, we've quantified somewhere in the $20 million range. We're still fighting very hard with FEMA to try to get that assistance that we all need. So whatever that you guys had as far as incidents can be remedied from the federal government as well. We're actively working on the drainage plan. As many of you know, your area as well as our area supported a $188 million bond to affect or to improve the drainage systems that we have here in Hidalgo County and all of Drainage District Number 1, really, that's what it's affecting. So we're working actively on that. Out here in La Villa, we're working on the reclamation project. We're digging 225 acres, 10 feet deep, to try to connect the main drain, which is where all of this water goes, to try to create more capacity so that we have more storage for the water that comes into our system, and it doesn't overload our system where it starts to flow over and flood our areas. As a side note, we also have an all hazards conference at the end of March. We invite your school district to participate in that. It's a free conference, and it's sponsored by Emergency Management and Health and Human Services at the county. We provide a lot of information about how to handle these types of situations. And again, this is just in response to that, so that, again, we can show the community, I think, that we're all on the same page, and we're trying to make sure that the health, safety, and welfare of our people come first. So we don't anticipate that there's any monetary consideration from the district that would come out of it. It's really just using your systems to get the message out to our constituents.
Cool. No, thank you, Commissioner. Any questions or comments?
No, I'm very familiar, Commissioner, with what y'all do, and Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Yes, second. We have Mr. Barco, motion for approval. We have second by Mr. Torres. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I'd like to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come here, and thank you for joining us in these efforts. We appreciate all you do. Congratulations to you, and good luck tonight. I know that you guys are working hard to improve your area, and we recognize and appreciate that. We'll also be in touch with you with some future drainage. I know that Mr. Cavazos and Mr. President Schmalzried had communicated some requests with respect to Ed Calchelsa. We do have some follow-up information for you, so we'll make sure to follow up with you on that as well. Thank you again.
Thank you,
Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, item B, consideration and approval of an order calling a school bond election and other matters related to thereto. Mr. Dusty Trailer and Ricardo Perez.
Let me see if I've got one more bit.
That's all right. It's all right. Go for it. Go for it.
Thank you. I could have moved over a signature. Thanks, man.
There's a paper shortage in San Antonio. I just want to let you know. Well, good evening, everyone. Again, for the record, Dusty Trailer with RBC Capital Markets. We have the honor and privilege of serving as the district's financial advisor. And then also we have the district's bond counsel as well, Mr. Ricardo Perez.
So the presentation before you guys this evening is one that some of it we've discussed a little bit before, but I like to, before we actually get into actual talking about bond election and scenarios and amounts, I think it's always a good exercise to just make sure we walk through what the district's existing bond indebtedness is and what bonds you have. So if you'll turn with me inside the tab number 1 on the presentation that I've handed out. On page 3 of tab number 1, we just lay out the district's current existing bonds, and currently the district has bonds outstanding in 4 different series that total $32.97 million. And from that you will notice if you look on the graphs down below, our annual debt service payments on these outstanding bonds is approximately $3.5 million per year over the course of the next 4 years, and then it drops down to about $2.5 million per year for a little while. You'll notice all these bonds are called by name as an unlimited tax refunding bonds. And if we were to go back and trace these back, these are all from previous bonds that the district had voted at an earlier time, but because you were aggressive in taking advantage of lower market interest rates that we had the opportunity to here over the past 3 or 4 years. You guys took advantage to refinance some of those older, higher interest rate bonds, and you now have got replace those with a newer, lower interest rate bond. That's why you see those referred to as unlimited tax refunding bonds for every one of those series. But you've done a very good job of managing that portfolio to help save taxpayer money. On the next page, we have what's called the district's maintenance tax debt service. You have 4 series of obligations outstanding that are paid for out of the M&O side of the budget. These total approximately $8.27 million right now. And what you will notice is those bonds have debt service of just over $1 million per year. There's a distinction here between the debt service on these bonds versus the debt service on the bonds on the other page. The debt service on these bonds is paid for out of your M&O budget, so the same budget that you use to pay for teacher salaries, put fuel in school buses, pay for equipment, those sorts of things. This debt service is also being paid for out of that budget, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward a little bit later this evening. Page number 5, we just lay out kind of a history of the district's tax base and tax rates. And on the tax rates, you guys have done a very admirable job here over the course of the past 10 years, where the state has clamped down and reduced funding and things like that. This district's done a very good job of maintaining its tax rate. You guys have maintained a tax rate of $1.25.8. And you've seen a little bit of tax base growth with the current tax base jumping up to $322 million. I'd like to point out the data on page number 6. What page number 6 does is it provides a series of data that compares EdCouch-ELSA ISD to the 25 other districts in the state of Texas that come closest to you in size. And what I'll point out to you that I think is a really interesting statistic, and I think it's important as we consider tonight. If you look over here at debt per ADA, item number 7 or column number 7, there in page 6, EdCouch-ELSA ISD has a debt per ADA or debt per student of about 8,612 students. As you look up and down that list and compare yourself to these districts that are of similar size to you, you guys are well below the medians there. So what you've done is you've utilized facilities and done facilities here within the district without having an overburdensome debt profile as compared to some of your peers here within the state of Texas. And then if you'll turn with me to page number 7, we do the same breakdown. But we do it for Region 1 school districts, okay? And if you also here look at column 7, but also look at column 12, you guys really and truly fall right in the midpoint on debt per ADA for all the districts here within Region 1. But if you also look at the total tax rate of districts here in Region 1, you actually fall a little bit below that median. Your $1.25.8 is below the median here for the region, or right around the median for the region. You see some districts here with tax rates up about $1.38, $1.49, $1.39, things like that. So you're below those folks. Okay, so I think that's a good just set of data as we consider the impacts of a bond election and taking on new projects. Just, hey, where do we stand right now? So as we get into Section 2, and look at a couple of scenarios that we have run to look at potential bond elections for the district. We lay out some assumptions that we use to run these scenarios. We assume the district collects taxes at about a 95% clip. That meets with about your historical ratings over the course of the past 5 or 6 years. We're also assuming that your tax base will continue to grow at a very modest clip for a very short time. So about 3% growth, then step it down to 2, and then to 1. We want to use some realistic expectations for tax base, but we don't want to be overly aggressive in that, and I don't think we've done that there.
Dusty, I have a quick question, Dusty. I sat through a legislative update today, and one of the priorities of the Senate and the governor are property tax cap.
Sure.
Is there any way that if that's passed during this legislative session that should affect us?
It would have I think it would have a very minor impact on, because some of the growth that comes out is growth of new properties that are not even on the rolls yet, and I don't see how they could have legislation that's going to affect that at this point.
It's just new tax roll. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, you could. Some of this growth, a substantial sum of this growth, could be from just new growth. Exactly. 25-year amortization on payback on these bonds. And we've assumed an interest rate on bonds at approximately 50 basis points over current market rates. So a little over 4% is the rate that we assume. It's a fair amount of conservatism. We do that because we're not talking about selling bonds tonight. We're talking about selling bonds sometime July, August, and the bond market interest rates could move up a little bit between now and then. We just want to make sure we're being conservative. We assume that you would get EDA and IFA assistance on your old bonds, and we're going to work to get EDA and or IFA assistance on these bonds. Currently, EDA is funded going forward, and that's how we've structured this, is to assume getting EDA funding. IFA, there is no guarantee that we would get new IFA going forward, but I think that as we move forward with a bond, we get ready to sell, it is important that we make an application to the state in case they do fund IFA for future years. It just is more advantageous to you to open up that avenue if the legislators make it available. And then we ran 2 different scenarios here this evening. Okay, we ran a scenario that assumes just $20 million for new money. $20 million for new projects here within the district. And then we ran another scenario 2, that assumed $15 million for new projects, but also assumed approximately $8 million to refinance those old maintenance tax notes. And the idea behind that being that by refinancing those old maintenance tax notes, you could move that obligation over to the INS side and no longer have that $1 million per year obligation on the M&O side.
Will save the district $1 million a year on the M&O side.
On the M&O side, correct. That's right. Okay. So you look with me on page 10 of section 2 there. We lay out what the estimated tax rate impact for each of these scenarios would be. Scenario 1, $20 million by itself. We'd look at adding about 14.07 cents to the INS rate for an estimated total INS rate of 22.87 cents. Scenario 2, where we do $15 million, but then free up $1 million on the M&O side by refinancing that $8 million of outstanding. We would have an INS rate increase of about 18.19 cents taking our total to just under 27 cents. 26.99 is where that would be. Okay.
That would be like $1.43 on the scenario 2 and $1.39.
There you
Still,
go. In total.
yeah, still not the highest tax rate.
You got it. Right. Then page number 11, we always like to try to quantify how these scenarios would impact homeowners. So what we did is we ran this based upon a homeowner with a $75,000 house receiving the $25,000 state homestead exemption. How would it impact that homeowner on a monthly basis and an annual basis? Scenario 1, the $20 million, estimated increase for that homeowner would be $5.86 per month or $70.35 per year. Scenario 2 would have an estimated increase to homeowners of $7.58 per month or $90.96 per year.
Based on $50,000.
Based upon a $75,000 market value, $50,000 taxable. Yes, sir. Okay.
How's the math calculated so everybody could do math in their head on their own house?
Do what?
How's the math calculated so everybody could do the math?
The math is calculated at the value of your house divided by 100 multiplied by that tax rate increase.
So it's a dollar error per times 100.
Exactly. Yep.
Dusty, we have a quick question. I know when we met the very first time around
Yes, sir.
that we discussed, numbers and what we're looking at and what we're
Yes, sir.
going. Correct me if I'm wrong, but scenario number 2, I thought we were looking at 20 and 8.
Well-
instead of 15 and 8. I mean, I'm just.
Because that's what we had understood at the got to
That's
that
what we had
workshop.
understood, and now the number's different, so I was just wondering where we're at.
During the workshop.
I went and ran. I ran. I've got it. I've got that scenario in my back pocket.
Okay.
And so I did not put it. I did not. It's not in the pages, but I did run that analysis. And that analysis, and I think it's a great question. I'm glad you asked. What happens is we're assuming that we're going to get EDA funding from the state on this. There gets to be a cap in the maximum amount of EDA funding that a district is eligible for. And if we start combining 20 million plus the 8, we really run above the cap. And so instead of getting 65 to 75% state funding, we get about 50% state funding. And so then that tax rate,
That makes sense. Okay.
instead of that tax rate would be about 10 cents higher than the max of what we talked about.
Okay, perfect.
So
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
that's the skinny on that.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to say, if you don't feel my, I think the idea here is Dusty's trying to find a way to maximize our capacity, so that we get the maximum amount from EDA.
From EDA.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I was just wondering because the number.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'd take that 65, 75 over the 50 any day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay.
That's
Sorry.
the scoop there.
No.
But I know I brought it up to Rolly right now, and he asked the question.
Yeah,
But
I
of
want to
course,
actually look at our old notes and
that's something we talked about during the workshop. But considering what you just said, it does make a lot more sense like that. But we'll just have to change up some of the project lists that we had and cut back on a couple things.
Yeah. And maybe we don't have to do a hard and fast 15. Maybe you said, okay, maybe you need 15 and a half, 16, whatever. You guys have that leeway to decide.
Dusty, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On page 7, you have our tax rate, total tax rate. Ours is highlighted at 1.2580.
What page are you on, Chris?
On page 7.
Okay.
And I'm looking at page 9, and scenario 1, it says the estimated increase would be 0.2287 and then 0.1407. Do those two numbers combine and add to that? Onto that?
No.
It's the one.
It's the one on page 10. Let's look at the one on page 10. That's the existing plus the new. So if we were to take our old INS tax rate or our current INS tax rate of 8.8 cents and add 14.07 cents to it, we get to an INS tax rate of 22.87 cents. But the tax rate that you're referring to there on page 7 does not include that.
Okay.
That's right.
And that's your total tax rate?
That's your total tax rate. That's right. Okay. So as we look at it as the thought being that you guys have projects that if you have projects that you need to have financed, we look at the opportunity for the state to come in and assist you as they have when you've done bond projects in the past, and looking at state funding assistance somewhere in that 65 to 70% range. Assuming current state funding levels remain the same, our student population remains more or less the same, that sort of thing. Okay. In terms of the rest of the presentation, I think the highlights that we really ought to hit in the rest of the presentation really can be found on page number 15. Page number 15 just includes the calendar to call a bond election and to conduct a bond election. This is the 2019 calendar. So what you will notice there, highlighted in gold in February, on February 15th, that's the last day to call for a bond election for the May election cycle. If we do call for a bond election on the May election cycle, then we would be in an early voting period that would begin on April 22nd and run through April 30th, with election day occurring on Saturday, May the 4th.
So what would happen to the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of May? There wouldn't be any?
They do not run early voting the last 4 days up until the election. There's a break.
Okay.
I guess.
That's a
I have
state
a question
law.
for Mr. Pettis. Mr. Pettis, there was no way to combine both propositions into one option, correct?
No, sir.
So we have to have two different.
It's got to be two different.
Okay, I guess that's what because I saw them here separated, Prop A and Prop B.
Yeah, they have to be listed as two.
Okay, so they're two separate entities in their own.
What Dusty was saying earlier, if you refund them, you can save about $1 million a year. Correct. If you keep budgeting the same way you're doing now, and you save that $1 million every year, right? If you do $16 million in 4 years, you could do the project that you were going to do with the $20 million.
Right.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
You just kind of keep.
Right. Keep them in the kitty. Right.
I want to save it in the kitty and then do the project.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. Okay. Thank you.
Dusty, if we chose to do it at a later date, November would also have to be done by 19th of August, right?
No, sir. If you decided to call it for November, the last day to call for a November election is August the 19th. However, I would point out one thing about going into a November election. We currently are in the last year of this biennium, okay? And so the EDA funding that we're trying to get us into the pool for and to have the state deem us to be quote unquote eligible for ends for bonds that have been issued prior to August 31st, 2019. Okay, so there ends up being, then we would have kind of that we'd end up having another 2-year lag, so to speak. Okay,
And that's on the IFA side.
that's on the EDA side.
On the EDA side, we should be able to qualify for EDA if we do it now, right?
You should be able to we should be able to get it into the program if we do it now.
But if the state funds IFA,
correct,
we'll also be able to qualify for IFA if we have the level of names.
I feel if the state does an IFA round, the projects that would be deemed instructional, I feel very confident that Ed Calchelso would qualify for IFA if the state makes it available. Every time they've ever done it and you've applied, you've received it.
So you're not anticipating any, I mean, it's going to be a big year at the legislative session. We're working on school finance and property tax caps and all that kind of good stuff. You know, but Edinburgh just called a bond election yesterday.
Sure.
So I guess, and that was Kevin. So I guess he's not anticipating any big changes either to affect this
right.
This election.
Correct.
the chances are more 65, 75? What do you,
Do what?
the chances of the EDA paying out?
Yeah, right now, based upon your wealth per student metrics and a bond that's split with about the 15 and 8, you'd be somewhere in that 65 or to 70% range.
That's really good.
So,
The ADA is important.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
yeah, for every $3 of debt service, the state would be picking up 2.
Yeah.
I hope everybody understands that. How important it is.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I said, I hope everybody understands that. you know.
ADA is really important here.
Yeah.
That's right. ADA's,
Yeah.
sure.
Now, the question tonight is, for the board, is to decide on either option 1 or option 2. And that is in your packet, that's in the packet that I gave you, this in your folder. There's 2 different options. Option 1 is just one proposition, which would be for construction only, no refunding. Then option 2 has 2 propositions. The construction proposition, proposition A, and then proposition B would be for refunding of the current M&O debt. So that's kind of the question at this point about which way the board wants to go.
So right now, when we call, if we decide to call this meeting, this election, we have to make a decision right now on what we're going to choose and how much.
Right. But you do not have to choose the numbers that I laid out in these scenarios. You can
We
choose.
just got to say you choose an option.
You can totally choose different numbers.
So we don't have to.
So say that again? We don't have to choose the what?
You don't have to choose numbers based on the scenarios I laid out.
Oh.
So we don't.
But you do need a number. But you do need a number.
I want to go for a bond for $100 million.
Yeah.
Then the tax rate.
No, the motion has to state the number, obviously,
Okay.
right?
Correct.
I just wanted to
You
make
gotta
sure.
exactly.
And
Okay.
Ben,
Yes, sir.
I got some legal questions on this. Can we talk about it in executive before we
sir.
make a decision right now?
Of course.
Okay.
You want to throw it into executive?
Yeah, it's
One thing I
executive.
want to point out to y'all just real quick in the election order, if you look at the Exhibit A and Exhibit B's of the polling locations, your election day polling locations, if you guys do choose to call it, are just your normal polling locations. But your early voting locations, we have a little bit of leeway, and we have them listed as your different campuses in the district to try to turn out.
The polling locations?
They're here in your packet. The polling places, the early voting and then the election day voting are in your packet.
And that's just an attempt to increase voter participation of people who this would affect directly.
Yeah, but
Your teachers.
sometimes when you have those elections going on in the campuses, you can kind of interact with things. But okay. Well, that's something we want to talk to you about.
Totally up to you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's take this into executive and then we'll be back.
I'll be here.
Okay. All right. There'll be next item will be executive session. Superintendent requests that the board of trustees convene in closed meeting as authorized by the Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, and under the section of 551.074. The purpose of discussing personnel considering appointment, employment, resignation, retirement, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. The time is 7:25. We are now in executive session.
session. Mr. Cavazos?
Yes, sir. I believe part of the discussion was that we needed to ask a couple of questions from Mr. Traylor. We wanted to know when the district could expect to get funding if we do decide to pass the bond issue, or if the bond issue passes in May.
Right.
What's the earliest that we would see money come from the state? How does that work?
Money starts to come from the state. The bonds get rolled into the EDA program. If you pass the bond in May, sell the bonds before the end of August 2019, make a small payment in August 19, then they are deemed to be eligible and in the EDA program. You might start to get some dribs and drabs of funding in this next biennium by the fact that they've been authorized to start.
What does that mean, biennium? Like what date is that?
Biennium is, so this coming set of 2 years would be the 2019-20 school year and the 2020-21.
But there's no real set date, right, Rusty? There's no like, on this day they disperse so much, on this day. There could be any time within that period of time.
They have their funding. They have their funding dates within the biennium.
Yeah, which is a 2-year period.
Right, it's 2 years.
Yes, sir.
So say the district starts, so say the district wants to start construction
Yes.
by a certain period.
Yeah.
But they don't have the money in the fund balance
Sure.
to front the money.
To start construction, you sell the bonds in the summer. Let's say to start construction, you sell the bonds in the summer of 2019.
Correct.
You get August of 19. You get the funds in the bank within 15, 20 days of selling, 20 days or so of selling the bonds. The money's in the bank at that point.
Oh, okay. Because right now you said dribs and drabs.
I was talking about the EDA funding, not the construction funding.
Okay.
Correct.
Perfect.
Correct.
That's what
Right.
we were concerned.
Right. Is that helpful?
Yes. Now, we kind of dabbled with some of the earmarks that Mr. Cavazos had already preliminary, had set some preliminary earmarks. We're at about the 16 range
Okay,
for construction.
sure.
Will that put us over that cap?
I don't think that the 16 range puts you over that cap. I think that we're close enough there to the 15 that I think you still start seeing state funding percentages more or less the same percentage as what you saw in the 15.
Perfect.
Maybe slightly less, but not down to 50. I don't think.
That's what we were
Right.
concerned with. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're still talking about pretty efficient state funding levels at that point. Yes.
Okay.
Last question, real quickly. Just want to settle on the M&O debt. Right now, according to what you're showing us tonight, it's $8,270,892.
Right.
So the ceiling for the refinancing proposition should be what, $8,300,000?
I think it ought to be about 8.2 million because you'll make payments on some of that in this fiscal year, but you've also got to make allowance to make sure that you size it large enough to account for some of the accrued interest that's part of that transaction as well. So make sure you've got it large enough so you can get the whole thing.
So it would be 16 and 8.2?
Correct.
Okay.
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 Thank you, Dusty.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so we need to make a motion, right? So we have the discussion and consider the approval of an order calling a school bond election and other matters related to thereto. So we say for the M&O we have 8.2, and for the INS we have 16.
Right, so it's option 2 then.
Which is
I'd like to make a motion to approve option 2, proposition A, school building bonds for construction, acquisition, and equipment of school buildings in the district at 16.2.
No.
16.
No, 16.
16? Yes, I'm sorry, 16. Yes. And proposition B, bonds for refunding the district's outstanding maintenance tax notes at 8.
8.2.
8.2.
8.2.
8.2, yes.
All right, Mr.
So,
Lozano.
Second that motion.
It's a motion. Mr. Barco seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes. record, we came back from executive session at 8:23 PM, okay?
8.3.
Any other items?
Yes. You had some personnel items, and then we have a legal item.
Okay. Mr. Cavazos?
Yes, sir. For item 6, I wanted to recommend to the board that we approve all the items as discussed in executive session.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Torres and second by Mr. Lozano. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes. Adjournment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Rudy.